Elena had always imagined her life as a fairy tale. Growing up in a modest home, she often dreamed of what it would be like to live in luxury. To be surrounded by chandeliers, fine silk dresses, and the kind of security her parents had never known. When she met Adrian, a wealthy businessman from the city, it felt as if her dreams had come true. He was polished, confident, and carried an air of importance that turned heads wherever he went. For 2 years, Elena had lived in Adrian's world, lavish parties, expensive vacations, and dinners in places where a single plate cost more than her father once made in a week. Yet, despite the glitter, she often caught herself staring at the empty spaces between them. Adrian was kind in his way, but he was busy, distracted, and his love often felt like another item on his long to-do list. It wasn't until the summer renovation of her family's old countryside house that her heart began to stir in ways she hadn't expected. Adrian had agreed to fund the project, seeing it as an investment, though Elena had wanted it for sentimental reasons. The house, with its cracked walls and creaking floors, held the memory of her childhood, of her late mother's laughter echoing through the halls. The construction team arrived one humid morning. Among them was a man who immediately stood out, not because of wealth or refinement, but because of the quiet strength he carried. His name was Marco. Tall, broad-shouldered, his skin sun-kissed from long hours of work, Marco moved with a purpose that made him seem almost unshakable. While the others joked and complained about the heat, Marco worked steadily, his focus unbroken. At first, Elena barely noticed him beyond the polite greetings exchanged each morning, but then small moments began to draw her in. The way he treated the older workers with respect, carrying heavier loads so they wouldn't have to. The way he stopped to fix a child's broken bicycle on the roadside during lunch break. The way he looked at the house, not as a paycheck, but as something worth restoring. One afternoon, a storm rolled in suddenly. The workers scattered, but Elena, caught outside, struggled to bring in some old wooden chairs before the rain ruined them. Marco appeared without a word, lifting the chairs effortlessly and carrying them inside. She thanked him, and for the first time, their eyes met and held. There was no arrogance in his gaze, no calculation, only sincerity. "Why save these old things?" he asked gently, glancing at the chairs. "They belonged to my mother," Elena explained. "She used to sit here every evening, telling me stories. I guess I can't let them go." Marco nodded, his expression softening. Some things are worth keeping, no matter how worn they look. Something in the way he said it stayed with her long after the storm had passed. Days turned into weeks, and Elena found herself drawn more and more into conversations with Marco. They spoke of simple things, the changing weather, books they liked, the history of the village, but beneath it all, an unspoken bond grew. His laughter was unpolished but warm, his silences comfortable rather than cold. Around him, she didn't feel the need to impress. She could simply be herself. But with every heartbeat that quickened in his presence, guilt crept in. Adrian was still her partner. He had given her a life of comfort, a promise of stability. Choosing him had once seemed unquestionable. And yet, here she was, feeling her chest tighten whenever Marco brushed dust from his brow or looked at her with those quiet, searching eyes. The suspense of her secret grew heavier when Adrian decided to visit the countryside to check on the investment. He arrived in his sleek black car, stepping out in a tailored suit that looked wildly out of place among the half-built walls and muddy ground. He kissed Elena's cheek lightly, barely glancing at the workers before complaining about the dust on his shoes. Marco stood nearby, his hammer paused mid-swing. The two men locked eyes briefly, Adrian with the sharp, assessing look of a man used to owning the room, Marco with the steady, unyielding gaze of someone who bowed to no one. Elena felt the tension instantly, her pulse quickening. That evening, over dinner, Adrian spoke about profits, expansion, and his upcoming trip abroad. He never asked Elena how she had been spending her days. When she mentioned the stories Marco had told her about the village's history, Adrian waved it off. "You spend too much time with the workers," he said dismissively. "They're hired help, Elena. Don't get too involved." His words stung more than she expected. That night, lying awake, she realized the depth of the conflict tearing at her heart. With Adrian, she had everything she once thought she wanted. With Marco, she had nothing except the feeling of being truly seen. The turning point came on a quiet evening when the renovation was nearly complete. Elena walked through the house, now transformed, yet still holding its soul. She found Marco outside, sitting on the steps, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Tomorrow, we finish," he said softly. Alina nodded, sadness tightening in her chest. "And then you'll leave?" Marco didn't answer right away. Finally, he turned to her. "You belong to a different world, Alina. One I can't give you. But if I had a choice, if things were different, I'd ask you to stay." The air between them grew heavy with everything unspoken. No touch, no promises, only the raw truth of hearts caught between love and circumstance. The next morning, Adrian arrived early to finalize paperwork. He was impatient, urging Alina to pack up and return to the city with him. She looked around the house one last time, her eyes falling on Marco as he carried the last of the tools out. He didn't look at her, and that hurt most of all. As she slid into Adrian's car, her heart pounded with the weight of her choice. The road ahead was clear, paved with wealth and certainty, but in her chest, another road pulled at her, a rough, uncertain path, but one that led to something real. Halfway down the road, Alina spoke suddenly. "Stop the car." Adrian frowned. "What? Why?" "Just stop." The car slowed. Alina stepped out, her heels sinking into the dirt. She turned back toward the village, her breath unsteady but her resolve firm. "Alina." Adrian called after her. "What are you doing?" She looked back at him, her voice trembling but strong. "I can't keep living a life that looks perfect, but feels empty. I'm sorry, Adrian, truly, but my heart, it's not yours anymore." And with that, she walked back, each step lighter than the last. Marco was still there, standing by the gate, surprised to see her return. Words failed them both, but none were needed, for in that moment, beneath the quiet sky and the half-forgotten village, Alina chose not wealth, not perfection, but love, the kind that grew not from luxury, but from truth. And though the world beyond might never understand her choice, Alina knew it was the only one that could ever set her free.